We stand here today because the President's continuing abuse of his power has left us no choice. To do nothing would make ourselves complicit in the President's abuse of his high office, the public trust, and our national security.
They're not impeaching the President because they can list an impeachable offense. They're impeaching him because they're afraid he will get reelected. That's not why you have the power of impeachment. That's the abuse of power.
U.S. Democrats announce formal impeachment charges today against U.S. President Donald Trump. They insist, following weeks of public and private hearings, the evidence is clear. Trump abused his power and also obstructed Congress. The impeachment inquiry was centered around Trump's dealings with Ukraine, specifically a July 25th phone call during which he asks Ukraine to help investigate his political rival, Joe Biden, and Biden's son. That sets the stage for a full House impeachment vote, possibly before the end of this year. Aaron Blake is a senior political reporter at The Washington Post. He joins us, of course, from Washington. Hi, Aaron. Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
So 2 articles of impeachment, abuse of power and obstruction of justice. Can you break them down for us?
Yeah, so this was actually a little bit narrower than I think we thought it might be. It doesn't include the word bribery, which is something Democrats had toyed with. It also doesn't include anything from the Russia investigation, the Mueller report, specifically the obstruction of justice portions of that. What Democrats have done here is they have kept this very narrowly focused on the newer scandal, which is Ukraine and things having to do with that. So Article 1 is abuse of power. That's basically saying the president solicited investigations from a foreign government about his political foes, and also that he used official government leverage to try and secure those investigations. So that's the abuse of power kind of in a nutshell. The second article is obstruction of Congress, which is basically the idea that the president shut down all potential cooperation with this investigation, including via documents, including by supplying witnesses from his own administration and his own White House, and that essentially this is an unprecedented degree of a lack of cooperation from the White House in the course of what is Congress's constitutionally protected control over the oversight of government. And so 2 articles, they're going to go to the House Judiciary Committee, expected to be voted on in the House next week, and then it's up to the Senate to begin the trial.
Yeah, sorry, I misspoke. I said obstruction of justice when I should have said obstruction of Congress. You mentioned off the top there that there was some speculation that it could be broader in scope, and I know in particular some Democrats were hoping for more. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think the big one is the Mueller investigation. Obviously, it's been a number of months since that report came out, and Democrats didn't opt to impeach immediately off of that. I think that's part of the reason why maybe they didn't include it. It would have looked like they were bringing up stuff that was a little bit old and trying to add it on top of everything else. But what we have to remember here is that Robert Mueller's report includes significant detail. I count 5 instances, 5 events that the president took part in which Mueller seemed to lay out significant evidence to satisfy the criteria for obstruction of justice. So Democrats really, I think, could have made a compelling case that would be something that plays into their broader impeachment case. At the same time, that's not something that the president was accused of as far as a crime goes by Robert Mueller. He decided that he was not in a position to accuse the president or clear him. And then, of course, we had the Attorney General, William Barr, actually did clear the president of obstruction of justice under controversial circumstances. So if the Democrats were to include that in the impeachment, they basically would have been accusing the president of a crime that the Justice Department has already cleared the president of. So it was a little bit fraught and maybe not too surprising that Democrats stuck with the narrower set of impeachment articles.
Speaking of the president, Aaron, how's the White House reacting?
Yeah, they're saying that basically this was a preordained outcome and that Democrats basically, fit the evidence into what they assumed was going to eventually take place, which is the impeachment of the president. We're also seeing Republicans, interestingly, I think, point out the idea that this is not, none of these articles, neither of the articles rather, have to do with something that is necessarily a codified crime. If you're not talking about bribery or obstruction of justice, you're talking about more nebulous things like an abuse of power, like obstruction of Congress. Republicans are going to argue that there is essentially no crime here. There's no proof that the president was engaged in the quid pro quo with Ukraine, and that without that kind of smoking gun, this is all speculative, and that Democrats are basically basically trying to fill in the gaps that their own investigation has yet to fill in. So I think the argument is going to be that this is a rush process that Democrats are trying to get through. They don't have all the evidence, but they're going to push through with it anyways. And certainly Democrats would have liked to have had more information, but of course the White House and the Trump administration have been trying to stop them from getting that information.
And just quickly, outline the process for us from here on out. Where does this go?
So House Judiciary Committee considers the articles. They could potentially change them this week. They vote on that, likely to be a party line vote. Goes to the fuller House next week, where they will vote on impeachment. They can actually physically impeach the President of the United States. At that point, it would go to the Senate, where they hold a trial. 2/3 of the Senate needs to vote in favor of removing the president. That would mean there would need to be at least 20 Republicans who are on board with that, which seems unlikely. But that trial will still be interesting. It's likely to begin after the new year because Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell sounds like he's not inclined to start that before Christmas. And so that'll be our little New Year's gift. We'll have a Senate trial, and I think the idea is that they'll try and wrap it up by the end of the month so that we can get started on the 2020 primaries, where many of the people who will be presiding over this or will be voting on these in this Senate impeachment trial will be campaigning in some of those early states in early February.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.